The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, every one of you. Welcome to ManageEngine's webinar on securing your network. This is Raja on behalf of Desktop Central. Before I begin, I would like to ensure that I'm audible enough and you can view my presentation. You can confirm it via chat. Thank you for your confirmation. Here we go. Today's topic, securing your network from Petya and Skype Attack. As always, we have an agenda. We start with an overview, and we are going to discuss few questions. Questions like who, why, what, and how. Who's the target? Why are they the victim? What is a ransomware, and how does it affect your computer? And finally, we're going to see how to secure your network using Desktop Central. So anytime during this presentation, if you have any questions, you can feel free to post your questions in the questions panel. I have an expert team sitting next to me who will be answering your questions then and there. Okay? So whenever we talk about vulnerability, whenever I personally talk about security, this is the first statement I would like to, begin with. This is not the first time, and of course, this will not be the last time too. It will be really surprising to know a fact. Have you ever imagined when was the first attack happened over internet? It happened in the year 1988. Yes, you heard it right. The year 1988. Ever since, these attacks seems to be endless. Here is a fact where close to 4,000 ransomware attacks happen every single day. As per a report which was generated during January 2016, imagine 4,000 ransomware attacks every single day. Business. I often associate business to a racetrack. So enterprises, every enterprise for that matter, focus on two things. One is customers and other are competitors. They try to compete with the competitors to win customers in the race of business. But today, to be honest, we have a lot of blocks. We have a lot of hurdles, in business. Many enterprises are not focused towards success, but they are just worried about survival. This is alarming, and the very reason is because of all these cyber attacks. So these numbers, the ever increasing numbers, represents or denotes three things. The first thing that I take it, is the number of ransomware attacks that happens across the world. The second indicator is the number of victims who lost their business or, who are struggling to get out of it. And number three is the most vital part, the cost that is being spent for recovery or rescue operation. So there's a huge ransom of money, and this money that is being paid is paid in form of bitcoins. When I say bitcoins, this payment is not made, using an actual bank account. So the currency that is paid is actually converted into bitcoins and paid for the hackers with the belief that they can either decrypt the data or you can recover your stolen data. However, there is no guarantee that the data which is lost could be retrieved. So I'm sure you should be familiar with the story till date. Now, let's move closer and take a look at what Petya and Skype Attack are about. Let's begin with Skype. Skype, in other terms, a stack buffer overflow vulnerability. So let us understand how it works. When I say buffer, I'm sure many of you would be aware of it. Buffer is nothing but in terms of, a developer, when they run a program or a script on a computer, they allocate a specific amount of storage. So the storage that is allocated is referred as buffer. So when a program is being executed on a specific computer and the data that is written on the computer, on the memory, exceeds the buffer, exceeds the specified limit, that is where this vulnerability comes into picture. So who's the target? Computers. In other terms, computers on which Skype is installed, version number 7.2, 7.35, and 7.36. These three versions are vulnerable. So why are they the victim? Because this is one classic example that we need to stay on top of vulnerabilities. We need to keep all our applications, be it OS-related applications or third-party applications, we need to keep them up to date. And that is the reason they are targeted today. So let us see what happens to the affected computers. Initially, when a stack overflow happens, as we discussed earlier, when the data that is stored on the memory overflows, the remaining data, that is the insufficient data, is actually stored on the cache or the clipboard of the computer. So attackers leverage this opportunity and they execute malicious code. At times, this can end up, resulting in exceptional errors or modifying the active process. So the complete impact results in crashing the application entirely. Might be they would even uninstall the application on the computer, or the application might crash frequently. So this is the impact on a computer. So does it end with that particular computer? Definitely not. Attackers leverage this opportunity. They also utilize the data on the cache and the clipboard to spread this attack across the network. So they hunt for the next computer which has Skype installed in it in one of these versions that we discussed earlier, that is 7.2, 7.35, and 7.36. And of course, it spreads across the network. Okay, so now let us move out to Petya. So before I begin Petya, we have just ran through the basics on how Skype Attack has worked, and the only solution is keeping ourselves up to date. You'll have to update Skype to the latest version. All right, now we are going to move out to Petya ransomware. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about this before, but Petya was first registered, the impact was first registered in the year 2016. So it was initially a ransomware, just like another ransomware that was established in the year 2016. However, the real Petya came into picture when Petya was actually, evolved as WannaCry. So an advanced version of Petya was actually termed as WannaCry, and of course, it shook the world by surprise. WannaCry and the effects have not faded away. However, now it is back again, Petya in 2017. This time, I could say it is much stronger and sophisticated. It has banged the business with hazardous effects. Now, researchers started examining it, and later they realized there were several, research at the end of which they realized that this attack, the original Petya attack, is just skin deep. However, they termed this attack as not Petya and further renamed this Golden Eye. So Petya ransomware, as referred by the world, is actually termed as Golden Eye, and this is one of the most alarming attacks that has happened in the recent past. Let us explore why is it so, and this is even more dangerous than the WannaCry. Okay, let us explore why and how it has entered into the network. So as we discussed, who is the target? Computers running on Windows operating system and which are not up to date. So those computers are the target, especially computers running on Windows XP, Vista, Server 2003, Server 2008, and Windows 8 are the most frequented victims. And of course, there is no exceptions. Even the latest operating system, if they are not patched up to date, they are the eligible victim. So why have they become the victim? Why are they the victim? Because Microsoft has released the security updates for this vulnerability, for the specific vulnerability during the April 11th of 2017. However, there are many enterprises who never considered this as significant. They never considered patching as a significant fact, even after witnessing what WannaCry, the message left by WannaCry across the globe. So those enterprises were the primary victim. How does it affect a computer? To make it more precise, phishing is the primary source for this particular ransomware to creep into a machine. Once it creeps into a machine, it affects the master boot record. So a master boot record, as being technicians, you should be pretty aware. Once a master boot record is encrypted, the machine loses its tendency to boot itself. Not stopping there, it actually encrypts 64 different file formats, and at the end of which it triggers a restart. A restart is simply scheduled, which of course you cannot go ahead and abandon the restart. You cannot stop the computer from, restarting. However, once the machine is restarted, this particular ransomware is so sophisticated, as I explained before. It renames itself, it reproduces itself, manipulates, and spreads within the same computer. Once it is widespread, the next thing that happens to your computer is what you could see right now. A screen with a display saying the data has been encrypted. And to make it even more accurate, this screen was displayed only for, a very minimum number of customers, for the first few customers. What exactly happened to the rest? Here we go. All right. I'm sure you should be wondering what happened to your monitor. This is exactly what happens when a computer is affected by Petya. So it's not just that machine which cannot reboot. All the data within it are encrypted, and the worst part is the data once lost is lost forever. Till date, we don't have a killer switch for it, and there is no way to retrieve the data back. So does it all end there with the computer being affected? No, it doesn't stop there. In fact, it exactly spreads across your network with this particular approach where they target the SMB, that is the server message blocks. I'm sure you should be familiar with eternal blue attack. This process of spreading across your network using your SMB, especially SMB version 1, is called as eternal blue attack. So it spreads across your network and hunts for the next eligible victim. So what actually does it do once it spreads in the network? As said, one machine is affected, the data is encrypted, a master boot record is tampered, of course with, with a lot of restrictions. It manipulates, it spreads across your network, it steals the credentials, or probably reuses, existing active sessions, uses all the shared locations, and it spreads widely into your network. So this ransomware is very hazardous for one big reason, that this payload can execute itself and of course manipulate and exploit all the vulnerabilities on unpatched machines. So almost all the vulnerabilities on unpatched machines will be exploited. So till now we have discussed about the ransomware, that is Petya, and cyber attack on Skype. So here are the impacts. How do we prevent it now? This is the important section where we'll have to analyze or explore the ways to prevent it now. There are two things that can be taken care of. There are two ways that this can be resolved. The first thing that we would recommend you to do is to block your ports. And number two is deploying critical patches. To make it more precise, prevention is the first step. Assume one of your computers is affected by Petya or by Skype. The first thing that you'll have to do is act proactively to ensure that the data is not spread across, so that you block the ports. And the next thing that you do is scan your computer, identify the machine where critical patches are missing, and of course deploy those patches immediately. Okay, so assume you're running on Windows XP. In that case, you can use Desktop Central's firewall configuration to block vulnerable ports. In case you're running on computers, on Windows Vista or later versions, you can use the custom script configuration to perform this operation. So these ports are considered to be vulnerable, especially port TCP 445 and 139. And not to forget UDP ports 137 and 138. So I'm going to take you to the product to give you a quick demonstration. Let's take a look from the product. So this is Desktop Central's web console for the users who are viewing it for the first time. I'm going to click on Desktop Central's configurations. Okay, you can find it as a second tab, configurations, and I'm going to choose configuration. So you have a lot of configurations that you can actually apply to computers as well as users. I'm going to choose firewall configuration for a computer. Here we go. And I can just rename this configuration. This operation is to block ports. And I'm going to choose it for Windows XP. Okay. Under action, I'm going to choose on or off. Whatever settings that we'll have to enforce, I'm going to say block, and I can choose the port as listed here. I'm going to choose 139. In case I wanted to make, add few more ports, I can still go ahead and click and add few more ports. I can customize the setting and of course choose the target. Here is something that we'll have to watch out for. So this configuration, this firewall configuration, should be deployed to all the computers which are running on specific operating system. Okay, and before that, I would actually recommend you to apply this configuration to a complete Active Directory or to a domain. Why do we do this? Because you cannot expect all the computers to be available within your network right now. Number one. Number two, assume you're going to procure few more computers. In case you're going to add few more computers to your Active Directory, even the computers which will be added henceforth will automatically get these firewall configured, immediately they are added to your Active Directory. So that this process will automate the task and you can feel rest assured. So I'm going to choose a local office here. Okay, and I'm going to choose this option to customize my requirement. So here we go. I'm going to click on this option where I'm going to filter computers based on operating system. What am I looking for? I'm looking for Windows XP. All right, here we go. So we are done with that. We have chosen the target, which means computers running on Windows XP. into my local office, they are all set. Should I exclude any specific computer? I can go ahead and specify it here in case I need to exclude any. All right. Once I'm done with that, I can apply this configuration. I can choose to apply it during a system startup. I can also specify configuration retry settings. I said, if your computers are not available right now, this configuration will be retried, the subsequent time, and they'll be deployed to the computers once they are back. You can also enable notification settings where you can specify the time interval to receive emails on the status of this configuration, and you can deploy it to your network. So clicking on deploy, this configuration will be deployed to the target computers. Okay, so this is how we secure ports on computers running on Windows XP. Now, let's go back to configurations. And this time we are going to use custom scripts. Okay, so a penultimate one script repository. I'm just going to click on this. Hope you can follow it. So once I click on script repository, you can view the list of templates that are available. These are ready-to-go scripts which are offered by Desktop Central. So Desktop Central provides you a wide range of scripts which you can go ahead, execute it on a single click. Okay, these are good-to-go templates. So I'm going to choose, here's my first script, block SMB v1 vulnerability port. So I've already initiated once, so I'm going to view it in the repository. Here I go. Here is a bat file. And I'm going to choose under actions, I'm going to create a configuration for the computer. Okay, so it is all set. I can simply go ahead and rename this configuration as we did earlier. It's for in order to block ports. Here we go. I can customize my requirement here by providing any additional arguments if required. I can also specify an exit code to identify the status of execution, the result of execution. I can specify the credentials. Say I want to execute this specific configuration as a system user, or probably I want to provide any specific user credential, I can go ahead and do that. Okay, and the final thing, again, we're going to choose the target. So let's choose the local office as we did the previous time, and it's time for us to deploy it. Wait, before I deploy this particular configuration, as discussed earlier, this is for computers running on Windows XP and later versions. Okay, so I'm going to choose the option filter. Okay, and I'm going to choose computers which needs to be excluded. This time I'm going to choose operating system to exclude computers. Okay, so computers running on Windows XP are now excluded and we are good to go. So one click away, this configuration will be deployed to all the computers, and of course right now you are safe and secure, your ports are blocked. Okay, so now let's move back to the product. This is exactly what we did right now. We have blocked the ports on computers running Windows XP and of course Windows Vista and later versions. So the next thing that we'll have to focus on is identify the computers which misses the critical patches and of course deploy them. Here we go. So deploying critical patches. Before I take you to the product, there are a few things that we'll have to take care of. The first thing would be updating your patch vulnerability database and then identifying the vulnerable missions. And of course, the final stage is deploying the patches and generating reports. Now, let us move back to the product. Here we go. I'm going to click on patch management. Right on top, the third tab, patch management. Okay. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottommost and towards your left, update vulnerability database. So this is an option which allows your Desktop Central server to synchronize with the online patch repository, which means every single day this synchronization happens at a specified time interval. You can also choose to do it manually in case of emergency. So what it does, it actually fetches all the latest patch details and keeps your desktop central server up to date. So now I'm going to take you to scan systems. I'm going to click on scan systems. Here is a list of details on all the computers. Okay, I'm going to choose all the computers and initiate scan. Once I click on scan, all the computers will be scanned and we'll get the data about all the computers. So this is how it appears. I've clicked on all patches view. So you can find 3 tabs here. One is missing patches, the second install patches, and applicable patches. Right now, the machines are scanned and we have the report ready for us. I'm going to click on search and let's search Petya with the description. All right, here we go. Here are the list of computers. Here is the list of computers where this critical patch is missing. So I'm going to choose those patches and all I'm going to do is click on install patch. Okay, so a patch configuration is ready. And I'm going to rename this configuration, just for my reference as Petya. All right, the patches are already loaded here. All I'm going to do is to define the time interval for this deployment to happen. Okay, so how do I customize my deployment? So we have an option called as deployment settings, which allows you to customize your deployment. Let me show it to you. I'm going to create a deployment policy right now to give you a better understanding. So I'm going to create a deployment policy for Petya. When should this deployment happen? I can specify it either during system startup or refresh cycle. I can also specify the time interval for this deployment to happen. Say, should this happen, on the first week or the second week, or, it should happen throughout the month. It should happen only during weekdays or only during weekends. I can go ahead and customize it. I can also specify non-business hours if I choose weekdays. Okay, probably there is another best way that you can do it. Since you never wanted to disturb your existing employees at work, you can define your deployment time. You can specify your deployment time interval during non-business hours, and you can enable this option. When you enable this option, even if your computer is turned off, the computer will be, waked up, the patch will be deployed successfully. Once the patch is deployed, you can also configure a reboot policy. You can also choose to reboot the computer, probably, shut down it, or you can specify what action should be done. Either you want to reboot it yourself, force reboot it, or allow the user to skip reboot, or you want to shut down the computers by just excluding the servers, you can well go ahead and do that. Okay, so once the deployment policy is created, I'm just going to save it. Okay, I'm just going to save this policy and we'll just, choose the policy here. So I've picked the policy from here and the policy is ready, and I'm going to pick the target. When I say the target, again, it is always recommended to choose the entire domain or the entire local office as a target, a custom group as your target. And the final option is to enable notifications. This allows you to receive notifications periodically as and when there is a change in the status of the deployment. Okay, you can choose to deploy the configuration, which means all your computers will be patched the moment they reach the desktop central server. Okay, right now, let's go ahead and check it out under installed patches. So I'm going to search for Petya. Okay, so I've searched for Petya and I could see the patches are installed. The same applies for Skype. Okay, so once it is done, you can actually export the data as a PDF or CSV or XLS, and you can report it to your management. So let's get back to the presentation. All that we did is we started with synchronizing the patch vulnerability database. We scanned the machines to identify the computers where critical patches are missing. And of course, we deployed those patches and we have generated a report for the management. Okay, so is it the end of the presentation? Are we done with this? Are we secure right now? There could be several questions. Okay, so I would say that this is the best time for us to think it over. Windows aren't the only victim. Probably now we are experiencing all these ransomwares and attacks heavily on Windows, but that doesn't mean Windows are the only victim. With no exceptions, every operating system, why not? Even a third-party application, faces these types of attacks. So this image can give you a clear understanding. A very alarming image, not in terms of representation. Within 3 fortnights, it started with WannaCry, it moved out to Delta Charlie, Samba Cry, Skype, Adelquist, Sudo, Fireball, Petya. So Delta Charlie, Samba Cry, Fireball, these are from different operating systems, be it Linux, third-party applications, Windows. So there is no exception. This is high time where we should realize the real need for keeping your computers safe and secure. This image is not new for many users. You should be quite aware by now. Shadow brokers are the one who have actually exposed these vulnerabilities, okay, and the story continues. There is nothing much that I need to elaborate on this particular image. The story continues. Being a system administrator, when I put myself into a system administrator's shoes, I believe I'm blindfolded, and left somewhere in the middle to find my way out of a maze. All you need at this point of time is a complete endpoint management solution. Only then you can put an end to endless cyber attacks. Okay, so here are the offerings from ManageEngine. Desktop Central, where Desktop Central is an integrated desktop and mobile device management software, which takes care of everything, right from patching computers, deploying software, troubleshooting computers remotely, managing mobile devices, executing configurations, and a lot more. Okay, you have Desktop Central for MSPs as well, that is for service providers, and a part of Desktop Central, that is the patch management, is a separate package as Patch Manager Plus, and not to forget on users who already have, Microsoft's SCCM with them, because there are many users who reach out for some kind of help, because Microsoft's SCCM primarily takes care of patching Windows. However, these vulnerabilities, they are quite exposed on third-party applications, and there is an urgent need to patch third-party apps. So our Patch Connect Plus allows you to patch third-party applications leveraging Microsoft's SCCM. Okay, so at the end of this session, you'll be provided a survey where you can provide your feedback and suggestions. If you are interested in a personal demo, you can definitely feel free to comment, specify or post your comment there. We'll be glad to help you out. Okay, so we're going to discuss on the questions. We have come to the end. Since it's a 30-minute session and we are close to the time, we're going to make it short and crisp. So I'm going to pick 3 questions from now. The questions are getting loaded. The top 3 questions. And this seems to be, the normal question that I often see related to security. What should I do to prevent these attacks in future? So what do we do? There are 2 things that I recommend you to do. Number 1, ensure that all your computers are up to date. Patch all your computers periodically. Number 2, ensure that you stay on the latest operating system. Be it operating system or applications, stay on the latest version all the time. Okay. Second question, how do I protect the computers which are not in the network? So when I say securing computers which are not in the network, I guess we discussed enough on this. Anyway, let me repeat it. It is always recommended to deploy configurations like securing ports, securing USB devices. So you'll have to deploy these configurations to your complete Active Directory, or be it your work group or custom group, which means anytime the computers get back to your network or a new computer joins the Active Directory, these security policies are, enforced automatically on them. That is one primary solution. And the next best thing is you'll have to automate the patch management completely. Being a system administrator, you cannot really be, effectively patching computers manually today. With the rising number of vulnerabilities, patch management is mandatory, and you'll have to automate it to make your life simple and easier. So what happens to the ports that are blocked? Yes, the ports that are blocked, we actually wanted to block the ports to ensure that the data is not spreading across your network. So once you feel that your network is safe and secure, you can feel free to unblock them. Okay, you can create another configuration and unblock them. So here we come to the end of the presentation. Since it's a 30-minute session and I've taken, a couple of minutes extra, I'd really like to thank your valuable time. Please feel free to share your feedback, which will help us to help you better. Okay, so here is one last information that I would like to provide you before I leave. We are running a free endpoint management seminar in 3 areas, that is California, Bay Area, Los Angeles, and of course, Dallas, Texas. Feel free to reach us. You can visit our website, and of course, we'll be glad to meet you in person. Okay? Thank you, friends. Thanks for your wonderful time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.